Welcome to How to Citizen. This is Chapter 1, Episode 1. The chapter is titled Constitution. And we have a very special guest today, comedian Rohan Joshi. In this episode, we talk about why our constitution is important. Do we even need a constitution? I mean, come on. We discuss some weird comic panels which are actually a part of our 8th grade civics chapters. No, seriously, if you go read the chapter, you will find some comics in there and they are amazing. So we have done some massive interpretation of what these comics mean in this episode. Rohan rapped out the key features of the Constitution like nobody's business. He clearly is an unexpectedly great student. Meanwhile, we felt extremely stupid. And we talk about our personal constitution in the end. What is our personal constitution and whether we have made any personal amendments to them in the recent past. So let's get schooling and let's get schooled by Rohan Joshi. I am here with my co-host Shreyas.
Hello, I'm Shreyas. Nice to see you guys. I'm the co-host.
Shreyas, can you quickly introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Shreyas Manohar. I'm a stand-up comic and a writer and a co-host. That's what I go by. I'm a co-host. I'm someone who's always there co-hosting in other conversations.
And how old are you?
I am 23 years old.
And what is your relationship with me?
My relationship with you is we are cousins.
Yeah.
We are from Nagpur.
Yeah.
From Nagpur together.
Important.
Very important.
Very important. And because represent... And we have a very special guest with us, Rohan Joshi.
Oh my god, hi guys.
Hey,
how's it going?
nice
Great
to see
co-host
you.
introduction, by the
Thank
way.
you.
I like how you
Thank
harped
you.
on and made sure we got the point where you're the co-host here. So totally not getting that until you mentioned the word 6 times.
Yeah, my name is actually co-host. Shreyas is just
Shreyas
like,
is just your nickname.
yeah.
Nice.
Rohan, can you quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Rohan Joshi and I am a comedian, a writer, and I do a bunch of stuff. And yeah, I think that's a pretty not vague and coherent introduction to myself.
Okay, Rohan, I have a question for you.
Yes.
We are on to the first chapter.
Indeed.
Do you remember in school that optimism that used to seep into students when you are starting the first chapter of the year? When every student is like, you know what, this year I'm going to study. I'm going to do everything right. And I'm going to be hopeful about...
You and I went to very different schools. You and I had a very different schooling experience, clearly. I remember the most exciting thing about school being when you got brown paper to cover the books. The excitement ended and started there.
You were one of those people who like to cover the...
I love to cover the books. Nothing made me happier than a sharp crease. And like a perfectly placed, like nothing upset me more. Sometimes you'd fuck up and there'd be like a label would come on diagonally instead of this thing and you were like, "Main kyun hu is duniya mein? Like I'm a failure, I failed, like what is the point?" But yeah, I mean I kind of know what you mean also because like I think just historically the first chapter is the easiest, right, of anything. So everybody's like, "Oh, first chapter, I've got this subject." And then by chapter 3 you're like, "Why did I choose calculus?" The first chapter was just the definition of calculus. I'm such a fool.
So which school did you go to, by the way?
I went to a school called Kambala Hill High School, which is in Kemp's Corner in South Bombay. It's an SSE school.
Okay.
And yeah, that was the school that I went
How
to.
were
And
you as a student?
I was a good student. Academically, I was a good student in the sense that I was always one of the sort of top 5 in my class.
Alpha,
like academically very alpha, teacher's pet, all of those things. Not very good at not good at sports at all. Very bookish in that sense. I used to do also. I was good at certain extracurriculars. I'd participate in things like school plays and performances and all of that. Surprise. On that, but other than that. Yeah, I think I was a competent student, and I think towards the end of my school career, like 9th, 10th, I think just in general as like slightly more adult distractions started taking over.
Yeah.
I think I slipped in the same way that some students do.
Yeah.
But like I sort of stayed in like the sort of top 5-10% of my class at all time.
Were you ever the school monitor?
I was school monitor. I was house captain. I was head boy. I was president of the Interact Club. Yeah, guys, my CV is littered with achievements that I thought would matter but do not as you grow up. I was told you should be head boy. It will be really helpful. And then I become 21 years old and you can't even say head boy without people just laughing at you.
But yeah. the part where we come to Suresh, you will relate to that.
I'm sure
part.
I will.
Yeah.
I'm sure I will. absolutely sure.
Just one question again before we get into the chapter.
Yes.
Is so this podcast is called How to Citizen.
Yes.
Right. And the whole point of this podcast is that we are going to use this book
Yes.
as a tool
Yes.
to get more people to read this book.
Nice.
Right?
So you're basically offering like director's commentary chapter by chapter
Yeah.
on a civics textbook.
Exactly.
Very good.
Yep.
Very good.
And for that, basically, we are doing something other fun thing. We are going to have an immersive experience also.
Nice.
Where on ivmpodcast.com/howtocitizen,
Okay.
we will have a drive link.
Okay.
Which will have all the chapters uploaded.
Nice.
So if you are someone who wants to have that immersive experience, you can go to there, you can download this chapter, read it with us.
That's a great idea, yeah. Because that way you can read the chapter and you get the audio. So it's kind of like having a book and the audio book, but also the people talking about the audio book and also the Comic-Con panel about the book all at the same time.
Exactly.
So yeah, I would definitely think of this as the best like Navneet digest of your life. And that's how you should approach listening to this podcast, I think.
Has all the questions and the answers.
Damn right.
And a lot of random things in the middle.
Indeed.
So tell us one place where you and your school friends used to hang out.
One place in school on
In
campus,
school?
or
In school.
actually, my school was physically tiny.
Right.
It wasn't a large school at all. So where we'd usually hang out
Surprise, South Bombay.
Surprise, right? South Bombay or anywhere in Bombay. Really. I tell you where we used to hang out. We used to hang out a lot there was just one sort of corridor directly outside our class where we would sit down in recess and talk a lot. Or then when other people were outside, we would just be sitting around in the class and talking. Those were pretty much the only two spaces where you could just sort of hang out and talk. And sometimes before the exam, because our school was actually in a residential building, there was a garage that had a little space.
Wow.
So we just go sort of sit on the steps there occasionally for last second mugging before it was time to run into like the examination hall. So,
I like the garage.
Yes.
I like the
The
garage.
last second
garage.
Yeah, the garage. Let's do the garage because
do
the
the
garage was always a very incongruous place for us because we're like, what is the garage doing in our school anyway? And
I
there
think
was
what
like
is
a
your
nice-
school doing in a garage should be the question.
That is just garibi now. That's a very simple answer to that question.
So imagine that we are sitting in that garage.
All right.
3 friends.
Yes.
And tomorrow we have a viva.
Okay.
Of this bloody chapter.
Okay, cool.
Right.
Cool.
So
Good
that
night,
is
man.
what-
Good night, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have to do that.
Okay.
Right. Who is our social studies teacher, by the way?
Our social studies teacher will be Mrs. Kitty Darbari.
Okay.
Great teacher.
Great teacher.
Really, really good teacher. Yes.
Kitty Darbari.
Yes.
That's an epic name.
That is an epic name for an epic teacher. Truly epic teacher.
Who
yes.
teaches civics?
Who
Darbari.
teaches civics history, civics history, geography, yeah.
Amazing.
Among other things, yeah.
Also-
We had several. We had also had Miss Chagla teaching us certain aspects of history. She was also brilliant.
Oh.
So yeah.
Does every teacher in your school have a cool name?
At least 2 of them did definitively. Yeah. 2 of them did definitively. Also, like I don't want to like shame the others. So yeah, everyone had a badass name. Yeah. You should have met Mrs. Iron Man. She's the best. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to read the introduction of the chapter.
Okay.
The chapter is called the Indian Constitution. Right?
Woo.
In this chapter, we are going to begin with football. A game many of you have probably heard of or even played.
Presumptuous.
As the name suggests, this is a game that involves the player's feet. According to the rules of football, if the ball touches the arm of a player, except the goalkeeper, good addition, then this is considered a foul. So if players start holding the football with their hands and passing it around, then it is not playing football anymore.
It's rugby.
Yeah,
It's rugby.
It's
Essentially,
American
it's
football.
rugby. It's American football.
Yeah, absolutely. क्या है ये? Right? Similarly, other games such as hockey or cricket also have rules according to which they are played. No shit. Each of these rules help define the game and help us distinguish one game from another. As they are fundamental to the game, we can also call them the constitutive rules of the game.
Okay, I have a question for you, Rohan. How much did you respect these rules when you played these games?
How much did we respect these rules when we played these games? See, we respected them until they worked for us.
Right.
While they worked for us, we respected them. After that, we defaulted to the rule of kiska chata sabse zyada strong. Then that was the rule that worked on the football field, basically.
Also in cricket, whoever had the bat made the rules.
Whoever had the bat made the rules. Whoever either brought the stumps or the balls made the rules.
Right.
Whoever's building you were playing in, they
Right.
made the rules.
Right.
Those were the rules. So at the end of the day, it was not. I would not say that like our games were governed by constitutive rules.
Right.
So much as they were governed by subjective day rate
Yeah.
depending on deregulated fuel price change every day type rules, basically. Whereas one day we would decide that 6 is 6, one day we would decide that 6 to it depended, right? So like, I'll give you an example. If you're playing in my building is on a hill, which means the building immediately next door, you have to climb physically down and then climb back up if the ball goes there.
No.
So if you're playing in my building, a 6 over there was out.
Yeah.
Because it doubled the effort of the person who would have to go down there and get it. So it would discourage hitting in that direction.
Yeah.
Right.
But you were playing in my friend's building where you could hit in any direction and it was easy to get the ball, 6 was 6.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that is what decided the rules.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Environmental conditions.
Environmental conditions.
The rules were entirely environmental.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. We sent you this chapter 24 hours before.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, I did.
Yes, you did.
And you have to tell us what you did. It blow your mind in parts? What is your initial impression of this chapter?
My initial impression of this chapter is that, first of all, it sort of blew my mind how many of these fundamentals, while I knew nebulously, I'd just forgotten in terms of bullet point form, right? Like basically, like what does the constitution realistically put down? Our federalism, our legislative system, all of that.
Right.
Like I sort of knew it nebulously, but I'd forgotten how it's sort of written down. What I did enjoy about this chapter is the analogies that they use, which I'm sure we'll get to in time. Spectacular analogies. Really not sure how they can be extrapolated to an entire country, but they work, I guess. What is also cool and what I wish though this chapter had focused on more is I don't think there is nearly enough badass myth and legend around our constituent assembly that made it happen.
That's interesting, yeah.
That just made the constitution happen. Because today, just when you think about the fact that essentially what? You're looking at a group of people that sat down for 2 years and just wrote.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Looking at a bunch of people that essentially sequestered themselves for 2 years and just went, that's it. We are making the freaking rules. And I feel like there's a bunch of badass, like, I mean, if you see something like Frost Nixon, and you've seen that debate, can you imagine the debates the Constituent Assembly had over those 2.5 years? The points of order and ethics and this thing that they must have, like, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about the number of plays, like straight up Tony winning plays you could write about the debates that they had during that period. And also just the fact that like our Constituent Assembly was led by Dr. Ambedkar. Just straight up one of the, if not the greatest figure in all Indian history. Sort of.
So many contradictions, but he had to set them aside and think about
so many. Not
crap.
just contradictions, right? You essentially, this is somebody who has come from a sort of strata of society that has constantly been sort of humiliated and dehumanized over time.
Absolutely.
Right? And then to be able to somehow sit down, sit there, be rational, be fair, be dispassionate, be all of those things while being in what society called the bottom rung of the pecking order.
Right.
I think is one of the greatest displays of rationality, logic, and just straight up clean ethical behavior in history.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think in history.
Yeah.
And I just wish there was more myth and legend around that.
Associated to that, right?
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about this also is that in India, I think we are the only country probably where universal suffrage happened right at the get-go.
Yes, immediately. Right? It was
Like,
just there for us at independence.
Everybody could vote regardless of caste, regardless of creed. Women didn't have to fight for their right to vote. Black people didn't have, like in America, it happened in 1965.
Agreed.
And that is insane because, you know, it was so progressive during that time where other countries were going through revolutions and throwing the British out systematically. We were like, screw the British, everybody here gets to vote. I mean, like, amazing time. But that's a great way to look at how basically our constitution was made, right? You know, like how the Constituent Assembly came about and how, you know, how much influence it had on our lives and still has on our life.
Oh God, yeah.
It's, you know, if you guys get a chance, do watch this series called Samvidhan.
Okay.
Which is actually, funnily enough, hosted by the favorite anti-national today, which is Swara Bhaskar.
Nice.
Yeah, and,
nice.
Yeah, and watch it. It's produced by Rajya Sabha TV. It's freely available on YouTube.
Nice.
And it's a dramatized version of the Constituent Assembly debates.
That sounds really cool.
It's very cool.
Okay, I know what I'm binge watching next. Done.
Please do that.
Done.
So, Shreyas and Rohan, can you tell us quickly what is a constitution?
What is a constitution?
Why does a country need a constitution? But before that, what is a constitution?
A constitution is a document that lays down all of the rules, directive principles, and guidelines that will sort of come to define the legislative and social fabric of your country, the ideals of your country, and also sets down the sort of founding principles that make your country different from all other countries. And I think that, in sum and substance, is a constitution. It's essentially it's the final rule book you turn to in any and all subjective matters that cannot be finally decided by rationality and fairness. It's the book. In that sense, I think it is the closest thing in the world, and this is any country's constitution, to a real holy book. In my opinion. That is my definition of the constitution.
That's interesting.
It's also, if I had to break it down to one line, it's basically a country's Tinder bio. Right? It's basically a country's Tinder bio, right? It's basically the thing that you look at and you go, this is what I stand for and this is what I want the world to know I stand for. Essentially, India's Tinder bio, right? I'm a sovereign, socialist, secular republic. And then other sovereign, socialist, secular republic go, oh shit, I like this person, I'm going to swipe right. They go, I am a dictatorial, tyrannical, this thing is another country, and you swipe left. So,
Secular, democratic, and sapio. That's what the
there you go.
Constitution says. I am very interested in the relationship between a constitution and a country because I feel it's like a double mirror relationship where the constitution governs what happens in a country, but what the constitution is also a reflection of the country. Like both those things affect each other, govern each other. I don't think it's a one influences other or the other influences one. I think it's a symbiotic.
May I ask you a question? Do you, and this is just what you said, do you think a constitution is a reflection of the country, or do you think a constitution is a reflection of what the country wants to be?
Right.
Like, and this is again, I don't have an answer to this. I've just genuinely wondered because it strikes me more as this is what we ideally want to be.
Right.
And then the rest of our lives are just this practical that is attempting in increments to live up to that ideal.
Right.
So
there's definitely a lot of dissonance between what the constitution stands for and what is actually happening in our country. And I think that dissonance is the gap that we have to cover. In a way, it is giving us the distance we have to cover. It is telling us the direction we have to go in to reach a place where the constitution holds true. Where it's not just a document that's in theory, that's on paper, but that stands for what it is.
It's very interesting that we are sitting in a garage and we sound very intelligent.
I know, right?
Amazing students.
We're the best students.
Yes. I really like how you described the latter part where, the constitution, is it what we are or is it what we have to be? Because our constitution specifically just had its 123rd amendment. Right, which also means that it is a constantly evolving document.
It's a living document.
It's a living document, right? Which also essentially means as society progresses, as things come about. Like for instance, the privacy judgment that came about recently, right? So until this point, everybody was a little ambiguous about whether we had privacy, whether we didn't. The government came in and said, "Arey, tumhare paas to hai hi nahi." And then the Supreme Court 9 judges came and said, "Ki actually hai."
Right.
So in that, they basically subsumed it within our right to liberty. So now, right to liberty was always there. What the Supreme Court did was it defined it properly so that it includes right to privacy. And that came about because of the current conditions.
Right.
So I think Rohan's latter definition would fit more because it's an evolving document, right?
And which is why I say it's the closest thing to a true holy book because that's what you need. You need from a holy book. You need a book that is constantly keeping up with the time. I think 123 amendments is great. I think that shows a tremendous amount of reflection.
Absolutely.
Which is quite fantastic.
So many. And so does it still sound like a Tinder bio?
It does, right? Because even your Tinder bio, you put your best foot forward, right? In your Tinder bio, you say, this is who I am. This is what this thing. You're not, on your Tinder bio, you're not saying stuff like, I occasionally dig my nose and, I occasionally let my toenails grow out and like weird shit collects underneath them. Even though that might be what really happens in your life, right? I still do think in that sense, it is our Tinder bio. It is our best version of ourselves that we put out there and we go, this is who I aspire to. This is who I want you to fall in love with. No matter whether that actually ends up being true or not. But this is what I want you to fall in love with. So I think it's a fairish description.
But when it comes to a Tinder bio, I feel people who are choosing they can read your bio and they can decide whether they want to swipe right or swipe left. But with the constitution, when you are born in a country, it's automatically
true. That is true. That is the big deal. It's not optional. It's definitely not optional.
So according to this book, it's both. Right? It's both. It says the constitution, it lays out certain ideals that form the basis of the kind of country we as citizens aspire to live in. To put it another way, the constitution tells us the fundamental nature of our society is basically both.
Yes.
Basically both. A country is usually made up of different communities of people who share certain beliefs but may not necessarily agree on all issues.
Yes.
A constitution helps serve as a set of rules and principles that all persons in the country can agree upon as the basis of the way in which they want the country to be governed.
Yes.
Right. So that's why I really like, the way this book is worded. Like, if you really like the Constituent Assembly debates, I think a shorter version of it would be this book.
Nice.
Yeah,
Right.
for kids.
For kids, yeah, sure.
And it's really ironic how we have forgotten this.
Yeah. But I think that comes from the fact that, I don't know about you guys, but civics was one of the least sort of focused on subjects in my school. Like the thing I remember most from my schooling is that my history book was 300 pages, but my civics book was one patla 50, 100 page document that was almost like an annex to the history book. It was treated as, your subject was called history and civics. And you spent the entire semester wondering when you were going to get to the and civics part. Because they were just focusing on history ka portion khatam karte aur literally last 3-4 classes mein bhaga ke pura civics ho jayega. In fact, I'm not mistaken, civics was a smaller part marks wise also in the book.
It was. For CBSE, it was 30 marks, I think. 70 marks was history and 30 marks was civics. And then geography was a full subject other than that.
Yes. Forgive me if this is too broad of a question, but Rohan, what do you think is the relationship between history and civics?
I think the big relationship between history and civics is, if it's taught right, is that you can use historical anecdotes and learnings from there to inform what should happen civically in the present today.
Right.
If you use the historical evidence of keeping two communities separate and what happened as a result of that to explain why we should integrate today.
Right.
And to prevent these sort of separations and fissures. If we use history to inform us why something like segregation or not giving women rights or now letting a certain community out and the consequences that came from, say, something like tyranny or something like that. If we use that to inform our present day this thing, then that is, when you bring history into the present, it becomes civics, basically, is how I look at it. When you just take any learnings from history and you apply them into the present, I think that is the key relation, right? Because it's like they say, those who are doomed, those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
I think civics allows us to break that loop.
Right.
I think civics is the thing that allows us to break that loop and be like, I can learn from history, I can be better, I can break certain cycles, and I can move forward towards being that ideal nation that I need to be.
Live in a civil society.
Live in a civil society. Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely. Shreyas, that was actually an interesting question. What is your answer to this?
I think I had a similar answer to him, but I'm just not going to be as eloquent as he was.
Okay, so moving on.
But hey, you know what? I'm going to learn from my mistakes. I'm going to learn from this history that just happened, and I'm going to implement that. Moving on.
Amazing. The podcast is only going to become better, guys. My co-host is finally going to do his homework.
It's like we're watching your civic awakening on air. That's amazing.
Come on, dude. Garage में बैठ के बस तुम बातें करो. हमारा guest पढ़ के आया. Okay, so moving on, we are going to move to the fun part of this chapter.
Yes.
So there are a bunch of comics, right?
Oh God, yes.
Used,
Analogy comics.
Which they have used. It's such an amazing way, but they can
I love the illustrations. They look like it. I don't mean to be rude, but it looks like boring tinkle. Every panel just looks like boring tinkle. I don't know what else to say.
So I have, and we will come to it. I'm going to blow your mind a little bit with each one, right?
Okay,
but first, let us describe this, right? So I'm going to play narrator.
Yes.
Right? Since you were class monitor, will be Suresh, obviously.
Okay,
right?
Cool.
And you can be the sucky child.
Yeah, done. That's who I am. Yeah.
Anil, right?
Anil, you're the class monitor, right?
I'm the narrator.
Suresh. Oh, you're the narrator. I'm Suresh.
Yeah, you're
I'm
Suresh.
the class monitor.
Yeah.
All right, cool. And you're Anil?
I'm Anil, yes.
Yeah, all right, Anil.
Okay, so we are going to read this out and we are going to build the setup, right?
Yeah.
So the scene is of a classroom, right? And the classroom has a bunch of kids who are sitting there. There is Anil, who looks like Harry Potter, and he seems to be writing his own book, right?
Yes.
And then there is Suresh, who is the class monitor. He is a bully. They have already given him a character certificate, so he is a bully. His classmates are not too fond of him. Mrs. Rao, the class teacher, has to leave the classroom on some urgent work, right? She asks Suresh to mind the class.
I'm not sure Mrs. Rao is a very good judge of character. First things first. But anyway, yeah.
Suresh starts picking on Anil.
Big surprise. Anil, today I am going to report you to Mrs. Rao.
But what have I done?
It matters not. I just want to destroy you. I want to end your will and sap the energy of your life until you lie a weeping wreck in front of me, Anil. That is what I want.
Are you a Marvel super villain or something?
Y'all don't know shit about Suresh, guys. He's got depth, okay?
So, Mrs. Rao returns to class, right? Mrs. Rao has returned to class. Now,
Ma'am, while you were away, Anil kept talking loudly and disturbing the class. He would not listen to me. He also took out a gun and shot 4 pigeons dead.
okay.
Maybe those pigeons had it coming. I don't know, but I feel like it's something you should have discussed with us first.
Right.
Point is, they're dead now. Mrs. Rao.
Okay, now plot twist. The narrator was always the teacher. Okay?
Ah.
Anil, you will have to stay back after school today and write, I will not disobey the class monitor 100 times. Also, screw you.
But ma'am, I did not do anything. But ma'am, I did not do anything. But ma'am, I did not do anything. I say this 100 times and still it falls on deaf ears.
Yeah. So that laughter was perfect to describe his face.
Exactly.
That guy's
Yes,
face, right?
exactly.
So,
Also, that laughter is the sound of misuse of authority.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
I just wanted the story to have a nice like coda. And like,
now,
sort of
I'm
ending
going to
it.
blow your mind a little bit. Did you notice the detail here where you can actually see Mrs. Rao going out of the classroom?
Yes,
Her
you can. You
sari
can just
is
see.
there.
Yeah.
There is amazing details in this comic. I will tell
That's
you
true.
more later.
Nice.
Right? So basically the comic is trying to tell us that there is something called misuse of authority.
Yes.
Which the constitution protects us from.
Yes, it does.
The line is, we choose our leaders so that they can exercise power responsibly on our behalf. However, there is always the possibility that these leaders might misuse their authority.
Sure.
Like Suresh and his evil laugh and his pigeon killing, made up story.
It's
Made up.
It's made up. Oh,
It's okay.
I like how you
All
already
right.
decided
Wow.
that. Nice. Yeah. Way to victim blame.
And the constitution usually provides safeguards against Suresh.
Wait,
This is
I'm
true.
going to read this sentence again so that we emphasize the right word. However, there is always the possibility that these leaders might misuse their authority, and the Constitution usually provides safeguards
Against
this.
Look, you have to appreciate the honesty.
it is
Yeah.
an honesty.
Absolutely.
You have to appreciate the honesty.
Absolutely, you have to do that.
Yeah.
And okay, so there is a very fun question right under the
Yes.
So I'm going to ask that, right? Okay, in which of the following situations is a minister misusing the powers? Right. Situation A: refuses to sanction a project of his ministry for sound technical reasons. Number 2: threatens to send his security staff to rough up his neighbor.
Fun.
I mean, okay. Number 3: calls up the police station asking him not to register a complaint that is likely to be filed against his relative.
2 and 3?
Yeah, actually.
Or is it just
But
3?
also,
2 and 3, right?
do you buy
2
the
and 3.
sound technical reasons? Like, don't you think that the language is trying way too hard to be legitimate? Sound technical reasons.
Yeah.
Does that remind you? Does that ring a bell? Sound
Amit Shah said
technical
this
reasons?
exact thing.
Right?
Yeah, we did this because of technical reasons.
Well,
Yeah.
no comment.
No comment.
No comment.
No comment.
On that.
No comment.
But if we are to assume and take at face value, no malice in this statement, then technically turning something down for sound technical reasons
Yeah.
is fair.
It's fair.
It's fair.
It's fair.
Yes. And maybe
I just-
should have happened
Yeah.
a couple of years ago.
I just like how the minister randomly decided that he has to beat up his neighbor.
Yeah, that's it. Maybe you're just like playing music loud or something
Yeah.
like that.
Or maybe the neighbor killed his pigeons, I
Yeah,
don't know.
maybe. Or maybe the neighbor playing the music too soft and the minister couldn't hear the amazing Sukhbir song that he wanted to hear.
That's exactly it.
So
That's what
Suresh
it is.
became minister
Yes.
and Anil was the neighbor.
Yes. Exactly that.
Is teacher the pigeon?
It's like the Cain and Abel of today. It's a constant war. It's just happening.
Okay, moving on to another important function.
Yes.
That the constitution plays.
Yes,
Again, there is a comic, but we are not going to do a dramatic reading this time.
Damn, okay.
You want to do it? We can do it.
No, that's fine.
Because I want you to describe it this time.
You want me to describe the
Yeah,
comic? Which
yeah.
one? Are we doing the games period
Yes,
one now?
games period.
Okay. So basically in this comic, what's happening is the games period is about to begin.
Yeah.
And the tableau, should we call it,
Yeah.
is distinctly split into two unequal halves where the boys are standing on left of frame
Right.
and the girls are standing on right of frame.
Right.
And the girls are saying, today for a change, let's play basketball. And the boys are saying, no, we will play cricket. To which the girl has a very fair question,
Yeah.
which is, we always have to do what the boys want because they are in a majority. Ma'am should think of another way to make decisions so that our wishes are also heard.
Yeah.
Right? Because, and I mean, this really does feel like classic this is a proper school example.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, there were always fewer girls in the class, and in especially physical ed period, they were always sidelined for what the guys wanted to do. But the story is luckily resolved. Because the teacher basically... Actually, the problem is not resolved. Plot twist.
Yeah.
Because the teacher decides to settle the problem with a show of hands.
Yeah.
And since there just are more boys than there are girls, naturally there are more hands for cricket than there are football.
Right.
And one of the men says, we've won, while also chucking the ball up in the air. To which the girl says, obviously there are more boys in the class. Which I think is an accurate summation of how the situation ended.
Absolutely.
Yes. What is this trying to tell us, guys?
Yeah. This is trying to tell us that Sonia Gandhi is in this comic. Did you see Sonia Gandhi?
I did see Sonia Gandhi in this comic.
He ke piche.
Uh-huh.
Doesn't that look oddly like Sonia
It
Gandhi?
does a little bit, that's true.
Again, so much detail, much wow.
You have spent entirely too much time
I know,
studying these
obsessing
comics,
over
my
this.
friend. Way too much time.
After, we will have to take a break here.
Sure.
But after we come back from the break, we will discuss what this epic comic actually means. Right? See you after the break. Welcome back after the break. And before the break, Rohan described a very nice comic to us.
I did.
So what do we learn from this comic?
What we learned from this comic is that if you just make all decisions on the basis of what the majority wants, all decisions will always go in favor of what the majority wants. And just because you are in a majority does not mean every single decision can go your way.
Yeah.
Because just because there are a fewer number of people does not mean that their rights are in any way less fundamental or less important. The rights of a people are not defined by the number of them that exist.
Yep.
Every individual has the exact same number of rights, whether there are 1,000 people in your clan, 1,000,000 people in your clan, or 4 people in your clan. Or that should at least be the case. Where somebody who represents 1,000 people and somebody who represents 4 people should have the same level of fundamental rights.
Right.
To their...
Basically, the storyboard is summed up as every society is prone to this tyranny of the majority.
It's true.
The constitution usually contains rules to ensure that minorities are not excluded from anything that is routinely available to the majority, which is great. And also, I must point out, the girls here will become taller than the boys soon. They want to play basketball all the time.
That's true.
Can I talk about something? So this guy, he says in the comic, he, we have won. And I think that sentence really signifies the attitude people in this country have about privilege. Because when people see privilege, when you ask people to think about their own privilege, they don't see it as something to keep in check, but they see it as a battle that they are winning because of systemic reasons.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
It's not winning or losing, basically. It's just that you just happen to be in the majority and you're getting the benefits. I mean, but he is basically considering it as if he's winning.
He's winning, exactly. Yeah.
We are going to move on to the third very important reason that the constitution exists.
Yeah.
It says the third significant reason why we need a constitution is to save us from ourselves. But then I see the incredulous face.
No.
Around,
I understand.
It's very theological.
I mean, a thinking student will be like, what?
Yeah.
What? But then they immediately say, this may sound strange. But what is meant by this is that we might at times feel strongly about an issue that might go against our larger interest.
That makes sense though, right?
Yeah.
That in the sense, I think it's just trying to define the distinction between having an emotional reaction to a subject and having a rational and just reaction to a subject.
Right.
And I think it's just essentially guarding against the fact that to stop people, I think it just understands that people can be extremely emotional creatures that occasionally sacrifice any and all rationalism when they see an objective that they are greedy for.
Yeah.
And I guess it's just saying that a constitution may protect you from that short-term gain, right?
Yeah.
I guess it's that equivalent of, do you want to have that 19th vodka? Of course you do. Because you're an emotional, illogical creature. But if you had a doctor alongside you who you could refer to and could go, you know what, I think you're good at 18 and I think you need to go home now, then it is that doctor is saving you from yourself, right? In the most sort of this thing way possible. So I understand that.
A doctor with a blood alcohol chart.
Yeah, just there. Just telling you to calm the fuck
ये
down.
तेरा लिमिट है, चुप रहे, अब तू घर जा.
हाँ, तो इसके बाद मरने वाला है, तेरा स्टमक पंप करना पड़ेगा,
right.
तो प्लीज छोड़ अभी के लिए.
Also तेरी गाड़ी यहाँ पे छोड़ के जा, ओला बुक कर देगा मैं.
Exactly.
जा तू यहाँ से.
Exactly. All of those things.
That's important. And also the fun thing is यहाँ पे example जो दिया है, right? It is possible that many people who live in a democracy might come to strongly feel that party politics has become so acrimonious.
Right.
That we need a strong dictator to set it right. Swept up by this emotion, they may not realize in the long term, dictatorial rule goes against all their interest. That's a very...
ये basically, और ये मतलब इंडिया में सालों से हो रहा है ना. I feel like this is from my childhood, this is a statement I've been hearing. Like for example, like I feel like if I'm walking down the street with a relative and I see a traffic jam, there'll be that once like, you know what this country needs is a Hitler.
Yes.
And I'm like, you guys know what you're saying? Like when you use that phrase so casually, like ये मैं 20 साल से सुन के आ रहा हूँ, right? It's not, you want to like make it about current political climate, this, that, whatever. Not my problem. On some level, I'm like, this is an attitude, especially privileged people, I feel like have always had so dismissively and so like easily they say phrases like, you know what this country needs? Somebody to bloody come in and just set everyone straight.
Set this right.
And I'm like, you know what you're talking about when if you had to extrapolate that sentence of set this right into actual practical moves that you want happening in this moment, you are essentially talking about a strike force coming in there, shooting everybody in the traffic jam that is disrupting the traffic and then walking away. You want that to be your solution for this right now.
Just so that you can reach your place 10 minutes
Just so you
quicker.
can reach your place 10 minutes earlier, right?
But in this scenario, it's very interesting how I've heard this like a ton of times as well. And I've had like proper arguments पहले saying कि तुम क्या बोल रहे हो. But then later I tried to understand where they imagine themselves in this situation, right? For instance, when they say traffic में फंसे हुए, like अरे ये सब country dictator, they always see themselves as the sidelines.
Of course.
They're like, ये डिक्टेटर आएगा तो मेरे लिए तो काम करने वाला है. I am the one who is going
it
to
will
be
only be the
benefiting.
majority that you'll always hear saying this line.
That's
you'll
true.
never hear a person who's not of privilege saying this line.
Absolutely.
This is something that only people with absolute certainty of privilege of their life being better than everybody else's say. You're right.
Yeah. And they're like, डिक्टेटर आएगा हमारा ही तो आएगा,
हमारा
ही बंदा होगा, वहीं पे ऊपर जो जाएगा हमारा ही बंदा होगा.
Exactly.
And that's so messed up in so many
It's
ways.
absurd. Yeah.
It's absurd. And I had a argument very recently with one of my relatives. Nagpur, represent. Who had the same sort of arguments, right? Like who was like, dictator आना चाहिए or whatever. So I'm like, एक तो तुम इंदिरा गांधी को criticize करते हो कि emergency लाया, ये किया, वो किया. अब बोलते हैं कि तुमको फिर से वही चाहिए. And that is when I got the answer. It's like, but this time Indira Gandhi will be ours.
Exactly. No.
But
that's it.
That
Which also
essentially
tells you, right? It's like people are not looking for justice; they're looking for victory.
Yeah.
Which is the dangerous thing, right?
Right.
You're not.
We've won.
Yeah. You're looking for we won. Not hey, he. Everyone's won.
Everyone's won.
Which is the actual logical outcome that you want, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then we will now move on to basically the meat of the chapter, which is the complicated part of the chapter actually.
Yes.
And we are going to try to run through this.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because it's called the key features.
Yes.
Right? Indian
Yes.
Constitution.
Yes.
But it's super important.
Yes, it is.
And Rohan, can you tell us why it's important?
Why the key features are important?
And in brief, just tell us what it says.
In brief, I feel like the key features of the Constitution as mentioned in this chapter are important because these are essentially the structural pillars of the Constitution.
Right.
Like in any building, you have the load-bearing beams and pillars and you have the other ones and the walls that you can knock out and drop away. These are the load-bearing pillars of the Constitution. Right. You knock one of these away and the rest of the document just falls away.
Right.
Which is why they're important because they state the basic goals, like the most fundamental goals of the country, which are, if I have read this chapter correctly and I remember, SSC flashback to Rattol. Federalism, also specifying the fact that we have a parliamentary form of government, specifying the fact that there needs to be a separation of powers between the legislative, the executive and the judiciary, and also specifying the fact that we are a secular country where everybody has the freedom of religion and certain fundamental rights. And these are all things that you cannot take away from the Constitution no matter what else you do. And that's why they are called the key features. No key, no entering the house. These are the keys.
Look at my impressed face.
I know. You have a very nice impressed face.
Look at my
oh my
impressed
god. I wish I had seen this face on my teacher 20 years ago. I would have just done so much better in school. Oh my god.
Listeners, he did not look at the chapter
I
at all.
did not look at the chapter. I
We
did
had
not
to
turn the
check.
page.
I had to check to see are these the features, and they were.
Guys,
Because ये तो पढ़ के आता
मैं
है
तो
नहीं.
पढ़ के आता हूँ.
guys, SSE, rattoing is not a problem.
Amazing.
Yeah. But I have realized 90% of the trick in passing SSE is can you ratto and vomit with charm.
Yeah.
It's not just can you vomit. Can you ratto and vomit
Right.
with charm.
With charm.
And if you can do that,
Yeah. Like you have to
Amazing.
vomit gracefully, so that
that's it. Yeah.
it makes
yeah.
a
yeah, like
beautiful
Bellagio,
shape,
yeah.
what is it called? Fountain.
Yeah,
Like a
Bellagio
beautiful-
fountain.
Yeah,
Bellagio
yeah,
fountain.
yeah.
It's got to be that.
Absolutely. That's amazing. That was actually amazing, and I'm very impressed. I was there to witness this historical moment.
Nice.
Rohan Joshi described in 3 minutes what our constitution is all about. I mean,
You're seeing it as 3 minutes. I'm seeing it as 10 marks, guys. You're seeing this in very different scales here. You're seeing it as 3 minutes. I'm saying it as 4 10 marks. Answer this freaking question.
one interesting thing which I would like to point out here is यहाँ पे ना, and this is something we have been discussing, me and Shreyas, for a while, and I had a giant debate about this with my other team which I have doing random research. Is the difference between a state and a government.
Yes.
Right, because यहाँ पे दिया हुआ है कि word state is often used in this chapter, but do not confuse it
With
for
the
state
government.
government.
Absolutely.
Right? For the clarity of the listeners, right? Whenever you hear a state
Yes.
being used, what it means is the whole structure of government.
Yes.
It's not just the elected representative.
Right.
Yes.
It means, your basically army. It
Yeah.
also includes your bureaucrats, judges, everything. You know that Mali
It's the
that
difference
fixes your
between
gardens.
the physical building itself and
Yeah.
the cooperative housing society that runs the building, right? In a way. Like, not exactly, but like, in a way. Like, for example,
Anyway.
the state includes everybody, including the people who guard your building, the people who live in the building, the people who
Right.
do all of that, the people who
Right.
take care of all of that admin. And your government is essentially that ruling council of
Right.
cooperative housing society that occasionally meets
Absolutely.
and makes key decisions.
Right.
Right?
Pallavi Joshi, is that you?
Well, that was fun. I'm leaving. Thank you. Never been so offended in my life.
But yeah, that's absolutely. Now that I think of it, that's a good example to put it, right? But the important part is that when people, this term cannot be used interchangeably.
They cannot. Absolutely not.
State and government cannot be used
I
interchangeably.
agree. And that's an important distinction
Yeah.
for anybody studying civics to know, because it clarifies the thought that basically just because you disagree with your government does not mean that you are disagreeing with the fundamental sort of raison d'etre of your state.
Right. Exactly.
Right?
Equating-
Just because I
yeah.
disagree with my civil housing society chairperson, because I maybe think he's being unfair or majority, doesn't mean I want to see the building broken down.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Huge difference between the two.
Yeah. And when they are interchangeably used and confused,
Yes.
that is when sedition happens.
Exactly.
Yeah,
False
that is-
sedition charges happen through there, right?
That is when sedition happens. That's actually a good way to put it. And so we will quickly go through what each of these key features are.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
So, federalism. Right?
Yes.
The constitution says we have 3 levels of government, technically.
Yes.
Right? But
Yes.
here it's on 2 levels, but
Right.
state and center. Right?
But
there
it's a
is
state center district.
yeah,
Logically,
state center, like,
yeah.
which is panchayat or
Yep.
urban
Yep.
local bodies, right? So again, important to point out here
Yes.
how we cannot directly elect our prime minister.
Yes.
And that is the most fucked up thing that I have seen happen over the past years.
Yes.
Which is, we don't elect our prime minister.
Yeah.
We vote for our MP.
Yeah.
Who is supposed to do certain things. Which are on the central level.
Yes.
Then we vote for an MLA separately.
Yes.
Then we vote for a corporator separately.
Yes.
तो तुम्हारा नाला जो है ना वो corporator ठीक करने वाला है. Prime minister आके नहीं करने वाला. So it's a beautiful structure.
It's one of the biggest contradictions of Indian politics in general, right? That we have always convinced people that they have to vote for whoever the hell the charismatic leader / prime minister is going to be, when, like you said, he's not coming to
Yeah.
fix your crap. Like,
Right.
you would
Yeah.
be so much better served by just voting in like whoever is doing the most work in
Right.
your area.
Right?
Like,
and also the guy who you voted for lives three doors
three
down.
doors down, yeah.
You
Direct
can just-
accountability.
you can just
direct
go and scream at
accountability.
him कि भाई ये fix करना है, क्या कर रहे हो तुम?
Exactly.
You can't go to like the prime minister and 7 RCR के बाहर. You can do that because you'll get arrested.
Yeah. I mean, very simply. Yes.
And also not get your work done because the Prime Minister will be like, "वो pothole मैं नहीं ठीक कर
But that's
सकता."
what I'm saying, right? These are the same people who essentially don't know that beyond a point, तू pothole के लिए Prime Minister को नहीं abuse कर सकता, वो BMC का problem है.
Right, exactly.
Right? बॉम्बे में वो BMC का problem है. तेरे को like जाके तेरे कॉर्पोरेटर को चिल्ला.
Right.
Like अगर तू pothole में गिर के तेरा कुछ हुआ, तो beyond a point तेरा जो भी opinion होगा मोदी पे, राहुल गांधी पे, उनका problem नहीं है. ये तेरा local body का problem है. तेरे देश में मतलब तेरे सिटी में बॉम्ब ब्लास्ट हुआ, तेरे को जो भी बोलना है प्राइम मिनिस्टर को बोल. सिक्योरिटी अपैरेटस उसका प्रॉब्लम है. बट दिस इज नॉट.
Exactly. Absolutely. And then the second point is parliamentary form of democracy. Shreyas, do you want to take a crack at
Parliamentary form of democracy. So what this basically means is that there is a parliamentary form.
पढ़ के नहीं आया ना तू नहीं पढ़ के आया ना ये लिख साला. Right? फेल होगा कल. ये ना you are very good at abstract thinking but not thinking.
Not at, if you ask me to summarize something,
नहीं होगा ना. So basically the whole point is that you can elect your own representatives to represent you.
Yes.
That is essentially it. That you elect a few people and they go to parliament.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then they talk about your problems.
Right.
Yes. Maybe.
Maybe.
I mean, that is what they're supposed to do at least.
I mean, yeah.
I mean,
Supposed to. It's adorable.
Yeah.
So cute.
I have a, I heard the...
Chapter 1 है इसलिए इतना naivety और optimism है ना. आज मतलब हाँ ठीक है, just checking. हाँ.
Like we have a chapter in this. Why do we need parliament?
Nice.
We're direct.
Nice.
मतलब,
That just
क्या?
sounds like one of my uncles in normal conversation. Like, why we need
dictator चाहिए. Dictator होना. And then the third point is separation of powers.
Yes.
And that is also important. Okay, so I'm going to quickly try to describe what are the three pillars, right?
Yes.
Which have like specific jobs.
Yes.
There's the legislature.
Yes, there
who are
is.
supposed to make laws.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Then there is the judiciary.
Yes.
Who is supposed to basically keep a check on when the citizens have a fight amongst each other.
Yes.
Whether the laws apply. And they'll resolve that case. Also, they're supposed to keep a watch on the other two pillars of democracy as well. Whether they're doing their work or not.
Correct.
And then there's the executive.
Yeah.
Who is supposed to implement the laws.
Yeah.
And that is as simple as that.
It's supposed to really be a very healthy Mexican standoff. Right? Logically, it's supposed to be the world's most positive Mexican standoff where everyone's pointing a really nice, sweet gun at each other saying, please be better.
Yeah.
That's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah. And tell me something.
Yes.
They didn't mention the fourth pillar though.
The media?
The media.
I mean, okay. Yeah. They
But,
didn't.
I mean, in all of this, the one job of the media is also to keep a watch on the other three pillars and scream about it.
Yes.
I mean, essentially.
Yes.
कि चल नहीं रहा है.
Absolutely.
तुम झंड हुआ,
Absolutely.
सब झंड हुए.
Yeah.
Right. And basically the citizens will be the ones hearing it.
Absolutely.
But isn't that like an important pillar as well?
I think it's an important pillar, but I don't think it's a pillar that, at least in our constitution, is that spectacularly protected. So I don't think you can call it a pillar. I think, like, for example, I think in America you could call it a pillar because it's been given the freedom and the sort of structural load-bearing capability that a pillar should have. It's been told you're free.
Yeah.
You're literally free to go report whatever you're wanted.
Yeah.
The simple fact is that in this country, it's not. Like, the fact is that the legal system is rigged against the media, just in the simple way that the sort of cases and the sort of financial and the sort of intimidation that you can be hit with is not something that you can hit any of the other pillars of our democracy with, right? So I don't know if in that sense, I would love for the media to be counted as a pillar. But I just don't think that at this point we have given them enough sort of rights and authority, with checks and balances required, of course, to call them a pillar. They are right now at best that, kabhi like when you see the ceiling collapsing in, ek do aisa extra bamboo dal dete ho room ke beech mein. Ye wo hai, basically.
Absolutely.
I think the way I'll describe it is that there are four pillars, but the three pillars that we have are angled in such a way that they don't allow the fourth pillar to stand.
Fair.
Like don't you think that's true? Like these three pillars.
I think, the fourth pillar is there. Just that the fourth pillar just doesn't know whether it's a pillar or not yet.
Yeah, that's all, right? Yeah.
It's like, it might be shorter, it's pretending like it's holding up the structure, but actually the three pillars are holding it up.
It's like basically ICC, no?
Huh.
You have test playing nation, you're associate member.
Yeah.
Like the other three thing you can definitively say, yeah, ICC test playing countries.
Right.
Yeah. ये कभी-कभी इसमें थोड़ा वो, it's like media is something like Zimbabwe, you know, every 3 years you have to look at them and be like, currently unka status क्या है? Are they currently counted as test play? Are they currently counted as associate member? What's going on? Like, so, yeah.
Absolutely. And the final 2 points, basically, actually you summed it up in one line, which I like, is that we are a secular
That was a 2-mark
country.
answer, guys. That was a 2-mark answer, so I went for brevity.
We are a secular country with fundamental rights.
Yeah.
Yeah. So citizens have certain fundamental rights, basically, which are, and they have given it here
Yes, they
in
have.
very nicely, very concise way, I
They
must
have actually,
say.
yeah.
Right to equality, right to freedom, right against exploitation,
Yes.
right to freedom of religion,
Yes.
cultural and educational rights, and right to constitutional remedies.
Yes.
Yeah, and those are important rights, but we are not going to go into those details right now. But what we are saying is basically it's a secular country.
Yes.
Where the individuals have certain rights.
Yes.
And these rights have to be guarded by the structure of
Yes.
democracy.
Yes.
Right? That is essentially the summation of
Yes.
it. Rohan, I'm going to quickly ask you though.
Yes.
What is your idea of secularism?
So my idea of secularism is that I think anybody should be free to practice their own faith, while at the same time, I think it's extremely important for people to learn that anybody should be free to practice their own faith in a way that doesn't interfere with anybody else practicing their other faith. And I think that's a part of secularism we forget a lot in this country.
Yeah.
We think it just means that everybody should just be allowed to constantly just be out in public, disrupting public life one way or another.
Right.
When I actually much prefer the version of secularism that says, you know what, do whatever you want about your religious freedom in the privacy of your own this thing.
Right.
Whereas when we are out in civil society, no one's religion should matter.
Right.
Right? I am of the belief that true secularism means that when you're out and about in society, it's not that everyone's religion should be respected. It should be that no one's religion should be respected. All that should matter are inalienable fundamental rights.
Right.
And all decisions should be made on the basis of that.
Right.
That's my definition,
Right.
at least.
That's actually quite accurately put.
Yeah.
But to the listeners, I'm going to leave this chapter with a cliffhanger because the next chapter is on secularism.
God damn, okay.
And the way it's defined versus the Indian way is different.
Foreshadowing.
Wow.
Foreshadowing.
This is like serial, but for secularism. This is awesome.
There is the
awesome.
twist in the tale.
Of course there is.
Yeah.
I have one question. I feel I always have an internal constitution. There are always rules, laws that I'm making for myself
Sure.
that are trying to make me a better citizen, a better human being. So right now, Rohan, in the world that we are in the time that we are in,
Yes.
do you have a working constitution? And if so, what are the recent amendments? What are the new guidelines coming in?
So, do I? Of course, we all have an internal constitution.
Yeah, right.
I would say that I think the most recent the most recent amendments that I've made to my constitution, and this is, I'm going to say, I'm be very honest, over the last 2 to 3 years, is I think I had to take a lot of sort of old sexist patriarchal thinking. And I think that has been challenged.
Right.
If I had to say one singularly fundamental amendment that I've made to my constitution is, I don't think I gave sort of women and women's rights and sort of just in general treating a woman as an equal, I think is something that I grew up in a very entitled culture, right? I think if anybody here has been raised in India in like the 90s or whatever, we are not a woke country. We were sure as shit not a woke country then.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's just something now over the last sort of 3 to 4 years. And it's come in good ways, bad ways. It's been a bloodbath. It's been all of that. But I think if I had to say what is the one fundamental amendment I've made recently to my constitution,
Right.
I think it would be that. Is just a little more empathy to anybody and everybody else who is different from you in whatever way.
Right.
Whether it's
Absolutely.
gender, whether it's social status, whether it's religion, whether it's caste, whether it's any of those things.
Yeah.
I think just, a little more fundamental empathy. And just another amendment I've made is the see your own fucking privilege in the mirror amendment.
Yeah.
I think those have been the 2 key amendments that I'm working on. I'm not even saying that the ideal is established,
Right.
but in practice, it's
Right.
still, it's a case-by-case, day-to-day thing.
Absolutely.
But I would say those are the 2 amendments to mine. You guys?
That's a great amendment actually. Actually, my amendment is more on the latter end.
Okay.
where basically I am learning to check my privilege as well, right? Because I am from Nagpur. We are both from Nagpur. I'm a Hindu, Brahmin, RSS, whatever, the
Yeah.
most privileged piece of shit.
1% of
Yep.
the 1%, right?
Yep, everything taken from there. And I'm actually trying to look at the reality that we are in right now and my
Yeah.
position here. And oftentimes, my one amendment I have sort of made to my constitution is that I should know when to shut up and
I
listen.
agree with you.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
listen. Yeah.
Yeah, still working on that.
Still working on that.
Still working on that.
Not everybody wants to hear my opinion about everything under the
Yeah,
sky.
Still working on that.
Still working on that.
Yep.
And one more, I think, amendment I have made to the constitution a while ago, actually a year ago, after I quit working with MPs, is that don't assume people are stupid.
That is true.
And always take them along. If they're asking you questions which you think are stupid, you should become stupid.
Yeah.
That's,
In your own-
Yeah, no,
in
that's
your
true.
own
I think
way.
that's been one of the fundamental criticisms also of just like liberal and leftist discourse over the last couple of years, right?
Yeah.
Which is that you guys think you're so enlightened.
Yeah.
That like, there was actually this great tweet that I saw the other day. This is how the extreme right behaves. Hey buddy, I hate people, you hate people too. Here, take 10 of these pamphlets, call your neighbors, give me a call if you need anything. Leftists on the other hand are like, oh, if you don't understand this issue, I don't have the patience to explain this to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And that is the fundamental reason why sometimes they win the perception and propaganda battle. Because
Absolutely.
a right-wing person will talk to anybody no matter how stupid.
Yeah.
While a left one will dismiss immediately.
हम तो superior हैं.
Exactly.
हम तो तेरे से नहीं बात करेगा. Shreyas?
For me, definitely recognizing my own privilege, recognizing that who I am, where I am, is not just because of who I really am, but it's because of what I've been born with. It's because of my caste, my religion, and everything that I've been blessed with. And also, I don't only want to recognize this privilege, but I also want to leverage this privilege to do good in this world.
That's
leverage
important.
this
That's
privilege
important.
to
Yeah.
amplify voices, bring out voices that necessarily don't have the same privilege as mine.
Yeah.
And I'm doing a lot of unlearning. I think more than amendments, I'm also deleting many things from my constitution,
Yeah.
many things
Yeah.
that just are normalized to us in so many fucked up ways that I'm trying to unlearn.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That was a soul searching
That was,
end
that
of
was,
the
that
podcast.
was. We got somber as shit at the end, guys. Nicely done.
I like that.
So
I
much
like
for
that.
leaving them on a high note. Like, yeah.
But I think that is the end of the episode after we have spoken about our personal constitutions. I hope the listeners have their own personal constitution. And if you do, please write to us. Please tweet to us. Where can they find you, Rohan?
They can find me on Instagram at Mojorojo. They can also find me on Facebook at Rohan Joshi. And they can find me at home watching Rick and Morty. That is where they can find me.
Shreyas?
You can find me on Instagram at Shreyas_Manohar, on Twitter at @very Shreyas, and as Shreyas Manohar on Facebook.
You can find me on at @meMeghnad on Twitter, MEMEGHNAD, and you can find me on Instagram as Meghnad S. That is MEGHNADS. And please, we are waiting to hear your views on your personal constitution and what changes you have made, if
Absolutely.
any, and what changes you have helped other people make in their constitution
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
That is important.
Absolutely.
So that was the end of the episode, and thank you, Rohan, for being here.
No, thank you to you two for having me, and also thank you for doing this podcast. Honestly, I think we've unfortunately lived in a culture that has taken these very important subjects and made them extremely dry and extremely
Yeah.
boring. And it's just nice to be able to sit here and talk about this in a way that can be fun and interesting. It's
Yeah.
been a learning experience for me, so thank you guys.
Oh, very nice. That's a good way to end the podcast. And if you want an immersive experience, go to ivmpodcast.com/howtocitizen and read this chapter. For the next episode, we have some fun. Two people coming in. Shreyas.
We can't spoil
We
it.
can't spoil it. We can't spoil it, right? Fair. And now, to end it, we are
Yes.
going to score Rohan, and then we'll end it. No. All this time, we were teachers.
No, this betrayal.
Since Rohan really nailed the key features of the Constitution, what I am scoring Rohan as is you're the key maker. You're the guy who makes the keys.
Oh, you guys.
I am going to give you a score of 6,234,000.
I will take it.
Yeah.
I will take it.
I think that's a little harsh, honestly. I think you could have been a little
Out of
You knew I needed 6,235,000 to make it to the college of my choice. You knew it, and this is what you did to me.
Okay, guys, thank you for listening. And this was Meghnad, Shreyas, and Rohan signing out.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. So, that was our episode this week. Next week, join Meghnad and me as we talk to Shrishti Dikshit and Andre Borges about understanding secularism.